Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you're listening. Welcome to the Employer Content Marketing Pod. This is the podcast that looks at employer marketing through a content marketing lens. So for the first time, all returning listeners, I really want to thank you for listening. You're really awesome in my book. Please do follow, share and rate this pod. Your support really does mean a lot to me, and I think it really helps kind of keep the motivation going to still produce these episodes and have chats with some great people in the industry. In this episode, I want to talk about early careers marketing. It's a highly competitive market, and it's important that employers are connecting school leavers and graduates with the right jobs. It's of course their first step in their career, so employers have a really big responsibility to make sure those first steps are taken with confidence. That's why I'm super happy to have Ollie Fisher, Co-Founder of Springpod, with me today to talk about how they're using content to help employers inspire school and college leavers, students and graduates. So let's start off with just introducing yourself, a bit about yourself, and tell us a bit about Springpod and why you set up the company.
Yeah, sure. So my background is marketing, really. So I've nearly been in marketing for about 10 years, primarily in technology space. So working for different startups and also on an agency side as well. Then about nearly 3 years ago, joined Sam at Springpod and co-founded the business. The main reason for setting up Springpod really was we're essentially a careers network for 13 to 24-year-olds. And what we do is help young people explore the different options that are out there and showcase the different routes that they can take to get to that career path. The reason for launching it was very much around our team's previous experience of careers advice at school. Still not really met anybody who rave about the advice that they got, and likewise when they left university as well. So we wanted to make it easier for young people to find those opportunities regardless of their background, and to also help connect them with employers and also education institutions online or before they leave education.
Nice. So did you feel there was a bit of a gap there that needs to be filled up?
Yeah, definitely. I think as I mentioned, when people are looking for work experience when you're in, let's say, in school, you often try and turn to your friends or your family and your closest people around you and try and help them, get them to knock on a few doors and get you some work experience. I find that's a bit broken, especially for more disadvantaged students. I'm trying to, if they can't get to the best companies in the UK because of where they're located across the country, trying to open up the opportunities. And we're doing that through in-person, obviously, work experience, but then also we're bringing out a virtual work experience way to try and enable every young person to get work experience with the likes of Airbus or whichever companies that we're looking at it with as well.
Nice. And how many people are in the company now?
So we're coming up to, I think we're just around about 18 at the minute, maybe a bit less than that. Losing track, a few new starters every week at the minute, which is great. So we're growing quite well. I guess since COVID, we've pivoted and introduced a new solution which has really taken off and enabled us to scale really. I guess I'll take you over that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, nice. And so one of the things I really like that you're doing at the moment is you told me about Springpod Studios. So can you tell us a bit about that and what you've been doing as a studio?
Yeah, of course. So I guess in terms of the business, we're currently structured. We have our main platform, which is our Springpod and our app, so iOS and Android. But then about 2 years ago, we launched our first series that we produced. And I guess it starts with I've been a big believer of content marketing throughout my career to date. And I guess looking at our audience and demographic, just creating blog content, it just really wasn't going to attract the audience and just not going to engage with it that well. And obviously everyone knows that creating video content at scale with consistency can be quite costly. So we were thinking about how can we try and bring this into our more product offering as well. So we brought out Springpod Studios, and it's been a great way for us to drive revenue and results for our clients, but then also to leverage the awareness driving it brings us, but then also focusing very much around affinity. So creating binge-worthy content that young people and also teachers can consume and they can show in classrooms, but it also keeps at the level of time that those young people spend with Springpod as a brand and interact with us, really.
What's binge-worthy? What's bingeable? What makes that content bingeable?
So I think in terms of, obviously you see like young people engage a lot with different vloggers and stuff, and they're creating consistency in their content schedule. That's what we wanted to bring to as well. I guess every single recruiter, every single employer brand in this space are fighting for the attention of these young people, and they've obviously got to fight against other mediums out there, especially with the likes of TikTok now. So we wanted to bring the content in a bit more of an interactive and engaging and entertaining way as such, really. So we did that with our so we launched our first content piece, which was back in 2019 now for National Apprenticeship Week. So we did a virtual careers fair where we teamed up with about 10 employers. It was a week long. We got a lot of really good feedback from teachers and from students around the content. And then that helped us really think about more series that we could put together. It was obviously it was a revenue driver for the business as well, so it's really successful on that front. So we launched our first binge-worthy series as such back in February this year. So we started the production in November, and it was called Classroom to Boardroom. So we had some really good results from that. We had over 800,000 students who engaged in the content, and that
Lovely.
was
Good.
That was a 10-episode chat show. So it's really, I guess it's quite a lot of work to try and create the production. Obviously, we had the revenue that came in for it as well, so that it made it worthwhile for us. But yeah, it was a really exciting process, and I couldn't recommend brands looking at it even more. I guess it can be, as I said, quite a costly thing to produce, but if you've got a business where you can look at monetizing it from a media sell as well, it's definitely worthwhile.
The virtual fair. So what kind of content did you create for that for your clients?
So the virtual careers fair was the content was essentially talks and panel discussions with apprentices and other colleagues from different organisations as well. So it was around about 25 to 30 minutes long. One example with Jaguar Land Rover, we recorded it at their special event vehicle operations centre in the Midlands, and that was really cool to see the different things on show there. So we went around and got a lot of cutaway footage, and then integrated that with our main panel discussion where we were discussing the life as an apprentice at Jaguar Land Rover.
Okay, so you had apprentices there kind of fielding questions, and was there an element of kind of demystifying the world of apprenticeships?
Exactly, yeah, and also taking them through the journey and what it was like, and trying to keep it quite authentic, really, I guess, and their experiences to date of what it's been like, and what advice they would give to other young people looking at going through that process, really.
So obviously that was, went down, very well. You reached how many people?
The virtual careers fair, we reached probably just over 30,000 in the space of a week. So that was, and our main route to market for that was via secondary schools and colleges. But then, one of our most recent ones, Classroom to Boardroom, has just had over 800 views for that content so far, and a really good engagement time as well. So they've been our main pieces of content. We've also recently released 2 new series. So one of them was a podcast series, which is coming out, and this is completely different and not like a normal podcast show, really. What we found is we get a lot of young people, especially because one element of our app is we have opportunities on there. It's always students, when you're applying for a job, it's the first time you've ever, could be the first time you've ever applied for a job in terms of an apprenticeship or a graduate job. And it's, of course, often quite scary applying and understanding what's going to happen once you've clicked apply. So we've brought out a new podcast called Clicking Apply, where we have recruiters and also candidates who are explaining to the listeners about what the process is like applying for a job at Jaguar Land Rover or cancer research we've had on so far. We've got numbers of different brands lined up who will be featuring on the podcast. So yeah, that's essentially what it's about, all about the process, what to expect, what tips they can give. And the whole content for that was going to be hosted on our opportunities and our job adverts. So again, it's a different way of utilizing content, and will be hosted again across Spotify and Google Podcasts. And then our most recent thing, which is Learn Lounge, which we released, start of April, I think it was. So a few weeks ago. So that's been a real success to date. We've had a lot of people engage in that content. So we've had weekly or daily broadcasts with inspirational speakers from the likes of Richard Browning, the jet suit inventor, all the way through to Monty Panesar, a cricketer, and many others. And we've got a really strong lineup of speakers we're inviting to try and inspire young people and also give the Q&A. And then we're also bringing out different streams of that. And this is how we're looking at bringing on some of our clients and also opening up to our new vertical, which we've gone into, which is the university and college market. So having streams specifically for different audiences so that young people can come through and join our employability masterclasses, but then also they can have a look at the different university content that is being delivered throughout Learn Lounge as well.
That's good. So there's a big focus here on something that's said often, which is kind of creating that valuable content, and kind of putting on the meat on the bones, and that is what you guys are doing, which is basically going, right, well, there's things that people actually fundamentally need to know that this content can help demystify, and there's things that although recruiters are very close to the ins and outs of their company and the process of getting to that company, I think sometimes it's kind of step back and realize that actually a lot of people don't know this, and so therefore going kind of back to basics is really important, and providing that kind of utility, that helpful content is I think really, really important. So it's, I suppose, giving it a different angle beyond what has so often been used over the years, which is promoting how great the company is and the opportunity you can get at that company. Is understanding that first of all you need to be doing a whole lot of work to actually make them understand what the world of work is all about, really.
Yeah, and I guess from the way that we've seen success of it as well is it's not having it so sat under our main brand as Springpod and bringing out more fun, different themed content groupings which are under a sub-brand has worked really well for us. It instantly demystifies the way of people that's from Springpod. This is brand focused, like you would see traditionally with a job ad, for example. Having it in a completely separate sub-brand has enabled us to reach more people and have it so that it's always powered by Springpod, and it's building that affinity, and we can have that softer call to action during the end of the content, but having it under more of a fun and engaging brand. And we've got other content series we're releasing again, which is under that. We've stolen a couple of ideas from Netflix, one of them being an Explain series, which is going to be called Apprenticeships Explained, and that's going to be on YouTube. And I think there's a massive opportunity across YouTube to try and tap into create from brands as well to create more long form content, which is under a particular area, especially from SEO. It's pretty, and we'll be releasing the Apprenticeships Explained in the next month or so. So we've got a series of 35 videos, and I guess I can't really. You can make video production, which you can spend as much as you want on it, but at the same time you can get quite same results as spending less. So with internally we've created all our content ourselves. For example, Classroom to Boardroom, we built the set ourselves. We obviously brought in freelance videographers, but you can create content like a video, a production company at a fairly reasonable amount and get really good results from it and make it look authentic and really professional as well.
Absolutely. I was talking to Nick Francis from Casual Films about something he mentioned in his book, which is kind of brands behaving like broadcasters, and I think this is absolutely like that. It's looking at programming that is fundamentally understanding, not just the demographics of a target audience's understanding and what their needs and motivations are, what their psychographics are. And yeah, like classroom to boardroom is, I think, a perfect example of that. It's about brands behaving like media companies, like broadcasters, and seeing, what content is going to be of value. And actually, looking at, the About Us section of your website, so that Springpod, we help young people discover their futures through career exploration and real world employee interactions. And I think it's no surprise that you guys have gone down this content-led route, because it's absolutely bang on for what you talk about as a business and enabling that career exploration. I think it's really great. So with classroom to boardroom, what kind of discussions will be had in that series?
Yeah, so we had quite a broad range of different guests who came onto the chat show. So we had it was very much focused because it was launching during National Apprenticeship Week. It was all of the guests and speakers on there were apprentices. So we had apprentices from the likes of EY, Pret, Jaguar Land Rover, Capgemini, ICAEW, which had a broad range of apprentices who came on and shared their experiences. So very much from what they were like at school, all the way through to what the program was like at that company, what tips they would give. So very similar to like the click and apply content, but just in a different format, really. As I mentioned, it was each episode, so the 10 episodes in total were focused on a particular brand, and they utilised the content to share it across their channels, and also obviously through our network as well. And we had a lot of schools utilising the content throughout National Apprenticeship Week, and a lot of obviously from that it's constantly being viewed as we go on as well. So yeah, there was a diverse group of apprentices, really, and we're going to be doing series 2 and series 3 of it as well, because it was a massive success. So we've actually got series 2 already booked in. That's going to be graduate focused, and we've got about 3 or 4 employers involved in that already. So and we're hoping that was going to be released in July, but obviously because of current circumstances, we're going to have to push that back, the filming of that. So yeah, series 2 and 3 is on the way, with series 3 focused on apprentices again, and that'll be for next National Apprenticeship Week 2021.
Nice. And yeah, I kind of see you being very responsive to obviously the current crisis, and moving towards having purely online solutions here, like Learn Lounge, for example. Why was doing something like Learn Lounge important to you and the business at this particular situation we find ourselves in?
I guess from the whole purpose we wanted to launch Learn Lounge was to, obviously everyone's quite low at the minute, and obviously the uncertainty around what's happening with exams and with UCAS and universities and so on. We wanted to try and bring content to young people that was going to inspire them, and to carry on exploring different options, and to try and bring influential people who've been there, and to use that as a mechanism, and to support teachers and parents as well during the difficult times, really. We partnered up with the Children's Trust on it, and that's their CEO spoke on it, and yeah, so there was an element of trying to give back as well from our brand for that series. But then separate to that as well, it was also we've done the virtual careers fair, which we did nearly 2 years ago, was our first take of virtual events. They can be quite challenging, so we used it as well as essentially as a bit of a trial, because we brought out a new product offering under a new brand, where we're serving universities and colleges through our online open days product. So we'll be delivering open days for our clients, so that students in our network can attend them, and learn a bit more about what it's like to go to that university and take part in mock lectures and so on. So yeah, it was a bit of we wanted to do something good. We know that our audience and our user base crying out for content like this. It's always been something on our radar, so that we wanted to do. But I think the current circumstances just enabled us to drive it forward quicker, really.
I think if we think about marketing conversations, and often things like inspiring and adding value is talked about. And again, I think what you're talking about is absolutely putting the meat on the bones of those kind of words and phrases, which is actually some of the stories you hear on Learn Lounge are fantastic. You know, Monty Panesar and, you know, Monty Panesar, you know, being very high profile, you know, a very well known person in the English cricket team with a really great story. And, you know, he faced challenges himself, didn't he? You know, and about depression, etc. And, you know, talking to entrepreneurs who did something because they had such a big passion for it. And you know, Toby, who was involved in one of the sessions, I know him well from way back in my school days, and knowing about his background and his family, and knowing his family, to hear his story about, you know, the challenges he's faced and how he's overcome them is, you know, was extremely inspiring, I think. In fact, so much so, I think you said that it was his session was being shown to a school in Cambridge during a school assembly, which is actually our school's rival school. So it's like, wow, that's amazing. You know, it's so we might try and get it into our old school as well. But for me, that's great, because it can seem a bit cheesy here, but it's absolutely true. You know, potentially there are entrepreneurs that will come off the back of seeing that kind of content. There will be people who want to do what Toby did, or something similar to what Toby did, which is, you know, travel a continent on a motorbike. You know, I think that is inspirational, and that's giving people the confidence to have confidence in themselves, really. So no, it's really nice to see what you guys are doing with Learn Lounge. Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess as well, with Monty's talk, we had nearly, I think, over 1,000 cricket clubs across the country who were sharing the content with their junior members.
That's
and I
good.
guess I just can't emphasize, like, doing stuff like with content, even doesn't have to be so product or service related specific. There's another level of content where you can look at, which is more theme based, and you can really tap into different audiences where your brand isn't currently exposed. And that was really a key learning from what we did. And I guess from early careers point of view, you can look at that from potentially from societies, but even again from sports clubs, or if your theme is closely related to what your business does and the mission, there's no reason why you can't tap into those different audience networks. And that was one way that we've really driven a lot of attendees and registrations for our Learn Lounge talks, and also had the experience set up, so it's really easy for them to get through and watch the content. So yeah, definitely recommend thinking about how you can look at your different themes of content, and then where the different other channels, because it's one thing creating content. Creating content is essentially the easier part. Promoting it and distributing it and making sure that it's in front of the right people, and it also resonates with them, and they're going to come back and watch it more. Especially when we've been talking about affinity, it's really important that you do get the promotion side of things right. And I guess making sure you show consistency in your schedule, so having your series all built up around whatever theme it is, and making sure people can know when to come back for the next thing. That's what that's what these YouTubers do really well, is making sure that once they've watched that piece of content, they know when to come back for more.
Absolutely. And actually, when you talk about recruiters or employers and YouTube, you know, and looking at, you know, having more longer form content on YouTube is absolutely right. I mean, I did something over National Apprenticeship Week where I looked at apprenticeship related videos, and you know, there just wasn't enough there. And so, you know, doing your explainer series, one of them covering off apprenticeships, is great. And I think I have often seen YouTube in kind of social media audits absolutely kind of right at the bottom in terms of time and attention spent on it to create content for it. And it's often has been seen over, well, for most of its life as a platform, employees using it as a place to store their showpiece videos. And other videos were actually not treating it as a channel. And when you treat it as a channel, you know, and you think, what content would I create if I was a broadcaster or a media company? You know, it totally changes. It totally changes. And I think what you're talking about is such a good example there. And you know, it's you're absolutely right about the promotion. It's so important to make sure that content is seen by the right people, because it can be amazing content, but you know, is a video great if it's not seen by the right people or enough of the right people? So, and also there's this thing about content actually becoming that evergreen content is something that is the gift that keeps on giving, in terms, especially on YouTube. People can view that content anytime, and it could literally last for years and continue to add value well after the post-production is finished on that video.
And you can always update the content as well, and it keeps the same video with YouTube. It's really important to think about. You can just update the video file so that you don't lose that juice that you've already built up, and just make it more relevant. You see loads of, I guess, the best marketers out there in terms of the SEO people are on YouTube are doing these videos constantly optimizing it. All they're doing is replacing the video and just making it relevant as the time goes by, really.
Yeah, things like thumbnails, make sure the thumbnails are right, so that when people are spinning through YouTube, they're actually, their eyes plant on the content that they think is going to be of interest to them, and making sure that descriptions are right, file names are right, video title names are right, and not just the file names of the video that was, the final version. There's all these little things that
don't just rely on YouTube optimization. You can always repurpose that content, and Google are now showing different videos within search results, so you can essentially mark that video up on your website, and it'll then appear within search results and video cards. So make sure that you're also making sure that the content is optimized on your website and reusing it in many places as possible. Really, don't just rely on creating the content for YouTube.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's down to looking at which platforms are going to be the best for you to use, and definitely that thing of repurposing content and making sure it's, you can use it elsewhere is, I think, really important. With Learn Lounge, so you've basically got a series of hosts, haven't you? So the format, although of course I'd imagine that a whole lot of organizations have gone behind it, but it's quite like the simplicity of the approach, which is you have a host, you have someone who's got a lot to say about something, and then it starts from there. So we're not looking at extremely high production value, because it's more about what they're saying above anything else.
Yeah, we have. So we worked with a number of different presenters, and again, other brands out there who are interested in looking at this sort of strategy. You can utilize platforms like Star Now, where you can get really professional presenters who are maybe still in university. They're really good. And we did a series of auditions a few months ago now, where we had about nearly 50 different presenters come and audition, like it was X Factor. But that was a really fun process for the team. But what it helped us do is really see which presenters would work well for us, and we've got now a roster of presenters who we're working with on Open Days, on Learn Lounge, on they've worked on Apprenticeships Explained. We've got a really good group of them who are fantastic, and they really get the content, and it just makes it look so much stronger. There's nothing worse than looking at attending a Zoom webinar and the people are just not engaging whatsoever, and the presentation backgrounds, the presentation design is terrible, and it's just instantly going to turn people off, especially young people. You need to make sure it's really engaging, and making sure that you can do things easily by just making sure that the backdrop of where the presenter is, they've got a image of your logo or what have you. It's really straightforward. So just making sure that you're looking at the essentials to make the content even stronger, and that's what we've done with the presenters, and they've definitely shone through so far.
And what's the viewing figures been like for Learn Lounge so far?
So we've varied in terms of we've seen that so the first 2 weeks of it, we were having 2 sessions a day, putting quite a lot of strain on the team. But up to now, we're going to 3 main high influential speakers a week, and then having our masterclasses as well for young people. So they've varied from, we've had up to 1,500 attendees live watching it so far. So yeah, the viewing figures for different sessions are varied, but to give it likes of Monty, we had over 1,000 watches live, which is great.
Yeah, awesome.
And then the viewing figures, obviously on demand, are even more so than that, where it's constantly being viewed, and we're now in the process of how we can repurpose the content so across YouTube, turning it into more shorter videos for social. So all of that process is we're putting in place at the minute. I guess as one challenge that we've had with content, because we're using it as a delivery channel as well for some of our clients, and it's a revenue driver. We've always been ones to create more. We've not been. We're now thinking about how we can repurpose more of the content and make sure we're constantly using it. So that's one thing we're looking into now, is how can we repurpose more of the content we've created. We've got so much of it. It's just trying to repurpose it as much as possible, really.
Nice. It's I think when you think of a company, a company is a piece of technology that's helping connect school leavers, students with employers. This is adding a massive extra layer to that, and I think this kind of content-led approach that you're taking through Springpod Studios is fantastic. So we've got early career marketers listening to us. They've got apprenticeship schemes that they need to be recruiting for, graduate programs they're recruiting for. What advice would you give those people if they're wanting to kind of turn the dial more towards having a more content-led approach to what they're doing?
I think, I guess it's obviously it'd be interesting to know the types of content that they're currently creating, but trying to think how can they turn that into more of, like I've been talking about, how can they say more binge-worthy, more of a schedule, and have a brand behind it that's not just your main brand. I know this can be quite difficult with some larger organizations, but I think it's really, even a podcast, which are really easy to create these days, having its own identity rather than it just being by Google and having that's the podcast name, have a brand itself, create a brand around that piece of content, is one bit of advice I would give. And I guess also experimenting across different channels, having a look at YouTube. There's a massive opportunity from that front, repurposing content as much as possible as well. You can quite easily do, when you're doing a podcast, you can also record the conversation as well and reuse that content across different social channels. So I think, just my one bit of advice would be to really have a think about how you can create brand affinity and how you can get young people to spend more time with your organization whilst they're younger, through content that's going to add value to them is one thing that I would really focus on.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, again, when you do it that way, if you're creating, say, this kind of sub-brand, this content franchise that sits under your brand, then straight away you do, I think, switch the mindset of thinking about, well, what content is going to be of value to the people who are watching this content, as opposed to, what do we need to say about ourselves?
Exactly.
Because there's enough, brands out there that will be talking about themselves, and there's the meaningful brands research that comes out every year from Havas worldwide. I think each year they've said the numbers around about, I think it's around about 70%, if not more, of people on this global research say that if brands disappeared tomorrow, or 75% of brands disappeared tomorrow, no one would notice. And ridiculous amounts of 65%. These are not exact numbers. I'll have to dig them out, but there's a big percentage of people are happy to hear from brands, but feel that the content is irrelevant and annoying, especially with the rise of ad blockers, and the highly competitive, swipe of the news feed, the swipe up, the swipe down, the swipe across. You've absolutely got to be having content that stands out, and say the approach that you guys are taking is absolutely doing that. Well, cool. I really appreciate your time, Ollie. I know you guys are busy doing a lot of great stuff over there, and I'll chuck in some links in the episode description to springpod.co.uk. It's really worth checking out Learn Lounge, and also Classroom to Boardroom. So I'll put some links in the episode description. It's definitely worth having a look at to seeing the approach that Ollie and the team are taking. But really appreciate your time, Ollie. Thanks very much.
No worries. Thanks a lot, Chris.
And have a good evening.
You too.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to follow or subscribe for the latest episode drops. And don't forget to get in touch if you want to contribute.